All right, let's dive in. Interventional medicine. It's really, it's this quiet revolution in healthcare, isn't it?
It really is. And I think there's a common misconception about what it actually is.
Right. When you hear that term, your mind probably jumps to, I don't know, microscopic robots or some kind of futuristic surgery.
Sci-fi stuff.
Exactly. But in reality, it often just comes down to these brilliantly engineered tiny devices.
Things like steerable catheters, flexible stents.
Sophisticated implants, yeah. These are the tools that let doctors make, life-saving repairs without the trauma of, open surgery.
And these tools are the absolute foundation of modern, minimally invasive care. Behind a massive portion of this whole industry stands one of the true titans.
The Boston Scientific Corporation.
Exactly. And when we talk about the companies that have built this revolution, we're not just talking about science.
Right.
We're talking about high-stakes corporate strategy, relentless innovation, and, well, often extremely intense legal and competitive controversy.
So for this deep dive, we're taking the sources shared by the listener, and we're going to trace the surprising and sometimes pretty turbulent journey of Boston Scientific Corporation, or BSC.
Our source material really does paint a fascinating picture of this U.S.-based multinational medical device giant.
So our mission today is to follow its trajectory from, and this is amazing, an almost grassroots experimental company operating out of a church basement.
I love that detail.
Right, into the multi-billion-dollar S&P 500 powerhouse it is today. We'll be exploring the seminal breakthroughs, analyzing its relentlessly aggressive growth strategy.
Which is all about acquisitions.
All about acquisitions.
Right.
And we'll also detail the staggering high-stakes legal and corporate integrity battles that have become a recurring feature of its modern history.
And to anchor this whole conversation, I think you need to appreciate the scale of this enterprise today. Right now.
Okay, let's lay it out.
Boston Scientific was founded on June 29, 1979, so that makes it 46 years old this year. It started in Watertown, Massachusetts, before moving to its current headquarters in Marlborough.
And the numbers that define its position in 2024, they're just immense. This is a company with annual revenue clocking in at a staggering $16.75 billion.
Wow. And they employ approximately 53,000 people across the globe.
And of course, they're listed on the New York Stock Exchange ticker as BSX, and they're a component of the S&P 500 index.
So what you have here is a company that provides absolutely essential tools. Life-saving and life-improving procedures across a huge range of specialties.
Like what?
Oh, interventional cardiology, neurovascular intervention, gastroenterology, urology, oncology. The list goes on. They are truly embedded in modern medicine.
But, and this is the core of the story we're unpacking, this immense success was bought at a very, very high price.
We're talking about massive patent wars, really complex integrations of other companies, and some profound safety liabilities.
Okay. So let's unpack all of this. We have to start at the beginning. The genesis of interventional medicine and the surprising origins of this future corporation.
The story really begins even before that 1979 incorporation date. Boston Scientific was formed as a holding company, but the real conceptual foundation came from a preceding entity, a company called Meditech, Inc. And this structure, this holding company structure, allowed them to position themselves specifically for growth in what was then a radically new field.
Interventional medicine.
Exactly.
So who was behind Meditech?
The creative force was a Czech-born emigre named Itzhak Bentov. He's described in the sources as this really eclectic engineer. He started a contract research company back in 1965, initially with a partner, Dan Singer. And what's amazing is the context. Bentov had worked at the prestigious Arthur D. Little think tank in Cambridge, a very corporate setting.
Right.
But he ran his first research operations literally out of his rented house in Belmont, Massachusetts.
Out of his house?
Out of his house. It is the ultimate grassroots start for what would become a $16 billion company.
That's incredible. So this humble beginning quickly led to the company's, its big breakthrough?
Yeah.
Aha moment.
That's it. The invention that would really define their future. In 1967, Bentov was approached by radiologists at Boston's Beth Israel Hospital.
And they had a problem for him to solve.
A huge, complex challenge. They needed a way to navigate the human vascular system without surgery. They asked Bentov to design a steerable, remotely controlled catheter.
Okay, you have to think about how difficult that request would have been in 1967. They're not just asking for a simple tube.
Yeah.
They need a device you can insert through a tiny incision, navigate through the labyrinth of the body's vessels, probably using external controls, and then position it precisely. That is groundbreaking engineering.
And it was a material science problem just as much as an engineering one. You needed polymers that were flexible enough to make tight turns, but also rigid enough not to collapse.
And biocompatible, of course.
Of course, it took 2 years of intense work, refining polymer compounds, building prototype after prototype, but by 1969 they released the new steerable angiography catheter.
And that single device, the steerable catheter, you could argue it's the foundational technology for all of modern, less invasive medicine.
I think you're right. It wasn't just a product. It was a total paradigm shift. It proved that complex internal diagnosis and even treatment could be done remotely.
Paving the way for the entire interventional device market that we see today.
And a breakthrough like that, it attracts crucial business talent. In 1969, a man named John Abele joined the small operation.
And he saw the potential.
He saw the immense potential. He secured an option to buy into the company, which he then exercised a year later, and he brought in Cooper Labs as a financial partner.
Okay, so this is when things start to get a bit more corporate, a bit more structured.
A little bit. But Abele's initial office was still charmingly unconventional. When he joined, the technical operations were still being run out of Bentov's lab.
Which was where, again?
In the basement of a Catholic church rectory in Belmont.
You're kidding me. A church basement. That's one of those details that just contrasts so sharply with the sleek corporate entity they would become.
It's amazing. So after Abele's investment, they finally moved the operations to a more traditional setting in Watertown, Massachusetts.
And this is where the real corporate partnership forms, right?
This is the moment. The transition from a promising lab to a corporate titan happened when Abele met Pete Nicholas.
Okay.
They lived in the same neighborhood in Concord, Massachusetts, and they discovered they had these perfectly complementary skills.
Okay, what are they?
Abele was the technological visionary. He was focused on the potential of non-invasive surgery, the instrumentation. Nicholas, on the other hand, he was the enterprise builder. He focused on finance, strategy, and rapid execution.
The vision and the execution, that partnership, that synergy, that had to be the genuine catalyst.
It was. They gathered backers from the Boston financial community, they bought out Cooper Labs' interest, and then, in 1979, they officially formed the new holding corporation, Boston Scientific.
And from that moment on, the strategy was clear.
Immediately focused on diversification through acquisition. The first wave of expansion in the 1980s was all about building a comprehensive product portfolio as quickly as possible.
Moving beyond just catheters.
Way beyond. Less than a year after they formally incorporated, they acquired a company called Kimray Medical Associates.
Which they then reorganized into Mansfield Scientific. That was a brilliant move because it instantly added devices like vena cava filters and cardiac output computers to their line.
Right. It signaled they weren't just a catheter company anymore. They were becoming an interventional solutions provider.
And they moved fast.
Very fast. In 1981, they acquired Endotech, which they renamed Microvasive, Inc.
And what did that do?
That thrust them directly into the gastrointestinal and pulmonary specialties. It moved their core technology into completely new bodily systems.
And then a few years later, urology.
Exactly. In 1988, they acquired Vantech, establishing a solid foothold in the urology market.
So if you look at that decade, the 80s, it's a systematic blueprint for domination.
It really is. Identify a high-growth, niche interventional field, acquire the leading specialist in that space, and then integrate their pipeline.
This strategy wasn't about slow internal R&D. It was about aggressive external consolidation from day one.
And that consolidation really peaked on December 31st, 1988. Mansfield Scientific, Microvasive, and the original Meditech were all formally merged into one single, unified entity.
Boston Scientific.
And that move prepared them for the global stage and the dramatic acceleration of the 1990s.
Which brings us directly into part two. The era of rapid acceleration, the rise of the stent, and the start of these truly massive, high-stakes corporate maneuvers that define their future.
Their entry onto the global financial stage was, of course, their 1992 initial public offering.
The IPO.
On May 19, 1992, BSC launched its IPO, offering 23.5 million shares, split between U.S. and international offerings.
This was huge. It opened at $17 a share and represented 23% of Boston Scientific's total outstanding stock.
And you had major financial players involved. The underwriters included Goldman, Sachs & Co., and Paine Webber, Inc.
And notably, Abbott Laboratories held a significant 20% stake in the company at the time.
Right. Which really underscores the confidence the medical establishment already had in their potential.
What was the initial market cap on that?
It was substantial, about $1.6 billion, which, if you factor in inflation, is equivalent to roughly $3.6 billion in today's money.
So that IPO was the definitive moment. They transitioned from a regional specialist to a serious, cash-rich global contender.
And post-IPO, armed with all that capital, the acquisition strategy went from strategic to just relentless.
Especially between 95 and 97.
Right. That's the key period. They used this money to aggressively increase their R&D footprint and their product offerings through massive strategic purchases.
And they weren't just buying small specialty shops anymore.
No, they were buying deep technology. They acquired cardiovascular imaging systems, which immediately gave them crucial intravascular ultrasound capabilities, IVUS.
So that's allowing doctors to actually see inside the arteries, using sound waves from a catheter tip.
Exactly. It's cutting-edge diagnostics linked directly to their treatment devices.
They also bought Symed, expanding their core cardiovascular business, Vesica Medical for urology.
And EP Technologies, which was focused on cardiac ablation controllers. This was systematic vertical integration.
They were trying to own the entire patient journey for specific treatments.
That's the goal. But rapid multinational growth always brings complexity. And we see an early difficulty surface in 1998.
What happened?
Boston Scientific was forced to restate its financial results for 1997 and the first 3 quarters of 98. The reason given was, let's say, euphemistically, business irregularities in their Japanese subsidiary.
An early, very public signal that high-speed global integration comes with some significant oversight challenges.
For sure. And moving into the early 2000s, the acquisitions became not just frequent, but astronomically high value.
Like the Target Therapeutics deal in 2001.
Right. They acquired Target, a leader in specialized neurology devices, for about $1.1 billion.
It's worth pausing on that transaction because the number itself is almost misleadingly simple.
How so?
That $1.1 billion purchase price was more than 10 times Target's total annual sales revenue.
10 times sales, not earnings.
Sales. That is a valuation premium that just screams confidence, or maybe desperation, to secure a technological lead. Industry norms are often around 10 times earnings.
So what was so crucial about Target's neurology pipeline that justified paying that enormous cost?
It signaled to the entire market, especially to rivals like Johnson & Johnson and Medtronic, that Boston Scientific was willing to pay a massive premium, a war tax, basically.
To acquire critical tech pipelines and establish a dominant market position.
Exactly. In nascent fields like neurovascular intervention, they were prioritizing future high-growth, high-risk assets over traditional valuation metrics. They were buying dominance, not just revenue.
And they kept up that high-value spending spree. In 2004, they acquired Advanced Bionics Corporation for $740 million in cash plus earnouts.
Gaining technology and neurostimulation.
And that same year, they acquired Advanced Stent Technologies for $120 million in stock, gaining crucial specialized stent system.
But the real driver of their revenue and the market collision was their flagship product that they developed internally.
The Taxus stent.
The Taxus stent. This is a drug-eluting stent, or DES, used to open clogged arteries. And crucially, it released medication directly into the vessel wall.
To prevent restenosis.
Exactly. The recurring problem where the artery re-narrows after the stent is placed.
And the Taxus stent became a commercial phenomenon. It was approved in Europe in 2003 and then got that crucial FDA approval in the U.S. in March 2004.
Which made it only the second drug-eluting stent approved in the country, right behind J&J's Cypher stent.
Right. And that placed BSC at the very heart of the most lucrative and fiercely competitive technological battle in interventional cardiology.
Which naturally brings us to what is arguably the single most defining and chaotic moment in BSC's history.
The Guidant merger of 2006.
This was a corporate showdown for the ages. Guidant was a major rival.
Especially strong in rhythm management devices like pacemakers and defibrillators.
So in January 2006, BSC launched an aggressive offer for Guidant, initially valuing them at $25 billion, or $72 a share.
And that offer was initially rejected, which set off this complex public bidding war.
BSC persisted, and the final acquisition was completed on April 21, 2006, for a staggering $27.2 billion.
A colossal bet. And the deal structure was complicated. It required Guidant to be split, primarily between Boston Scientific and Abbott Laboratories.
But that acquisition instantly cemented Boston Scientific's position as a powerhouse, especially in electrophysiology and rhythm management.
It effectively eliminated one of their largest competitors in one move.
But integrating a rival of that scale, at that cost,
Yeah.
that is never a clean process.
No. The sources show that just 4 years later, in 2010, Boston Scientific eliminated 1,300 jobs when it moved to rationalize and consolidate the heart rhythm business it had acquired from Guidant.
And that specific detail, 1,300 people laid off, it really underscores the immense financial pressure and the operational difficulty involved in absorbing two massive, overlapping corporate cultures.
It was a massive win for market share, but it came with significant human and financial friction during the integration.
So the Guidant merger really solidified this aggressive M&A playbook. And post-Guidant, the consistent use of large-scale acquisitions to dominate specific niche fields just became BSC's permanent operational blueprint.
Absolutely. Let's run through some of the most impactful post-Guidant deals, starting with their continual expansion in cardiac and electrophysiology.
Okay.
In 2012, they acquired Cameron Health for a total sum of $1.3 billion. This was crucial because it secured the emblem's subcutaneous implantable defibrillator, the SICD.
The SICD is a true innovation. It's a defibrillator that sits just under the skin, outside the rib cage, instead of having leads implanted directly into the heart muscle.
Right, which makes the procedure far less invasive and reduces a lot of the complications that are associated with transvenous leads.
So that acquisition brought a genuine step-change device into their portfolio.
Later that same year, they acquired Rhythmia Medical, which specialized in advanced 3D mapping and navigation methods.
Absolutely crucial for precision in cardiac ablation procedures.
Right. And then a year later, 2013, they bought the electrophysiology business of C.R. Bard EP for $275 million, further cementing their dominance in the rhythm management tech they got from Guidant.
And the speed just hasn't slowed down recently. 2021 was an exceptionally active year for them.
It was. They acquired Farapulse, a startup focusing on pulse field ablation technology, a really cutting-edge method for treating arrhythmias. They bought the 73% of the company they didn't already own.
And they also acquired Baylis Medical Company for $1.75 billion, significantly expanding their electrophysiology and structural heart portfolios.
And this strategy isn't just restricted to cardiology. They advanced their urology and gynecology portfolio considerably by acquiring Endo International's American Medical Systems urology business for at least $1.6 billion in 2015.
They also bought EndoChoice Holdings in 2016 for $210 million, ensuring they remained a leader in endoscopy and minimally invasive GI.
The recent high-value deals are just astounding. They acquired the UK medical device maker BTG PL-Dye for $4.2 billion in 2018.
In 2021, they acquired Relievant Med Systems for $850 million upfront, and in January 2024, they announced the acquisition of Axonics, a specialist in sacral nerve stimulation, for $3.7 billion.
This relentless, high-speed, multi-billion-dollar acquisition strategy is the foundational engine of their growth. It guarantees a fresh, cutting-edge technology pipeline at all times. But it's important to note the complexity. The attempted acquisition of South Korea's MI Tech for $230 million was canceled in May 2023.
Why?
Citing regulatory hurdles. So even with all their resources, navigating international regulatory approval remains a bottleneck and a real risk.
So we have this portrait of aggressive, almost unstoppable financial growth, all powered by M&A. But this velocity comes with profound risk, which leads us directly into part 3, where we have to examine the cost of that growth, the staggering litigation, the relentless patent wars, and the fundamental product safety concerns that have plagued the company for decades.
The litigation history of Boston Scientific is just massive. I mean, we are often talking about 9- and 10-figure sums.
And the most financially punitive example is that patent war with Johnson & Johnson that officially started back in 2003.
And it was centered entirely on competing intellectual property for those crucial heart stents.
The Taxus versus the Cipher.
Exactly. And this was not a minor courtroom skirmish. This was an industry-defining patent war with billions on the line.
Both giants claimed the other had infringed their foundational device patents. So to finally settle this, BSC was forced to agree to 2 colossal payouts.
First, $716 million to J&J in September 2009.
And then, just a few months later, in February 2010, an even larger payment of $1.73 billion.
So if you add that up, that is a total payout of $2.446 billion.
In just 2 years, paid directly to their primary competitor over these IP claims. It's an almost unbelievable figure. It wasn't just a fee. It was essentially a tax on their success.
And this cost didn't even end there. The sources note that the legal wrangling continued. There was a separate contract breach case scheduled for 2014 where J&J was seeking over $5 billion in additional damages.
Wow. And J&J wasn't the only one getting these massive patent payouts.
Right. BSC also paid $85 million to Nevro and $42 million to Titugen for other patent disputes.
This constant multi-million-dollar stream of payment shows that legal defense and settlement costs are basically a permanent, non-optional part of Boston Scientific's operating budget.
But far more serious and profoundly damaging to the company's integrity are the controversies involving product safety and direct patient harm.
And the most recognized and widespread scandal involves the transvaginal mesh product.
This is a devastating and complex issue. It involves tens of thousands of victims. Boston Scientific was one of several major manufacturers of this mesh,
which was used to surgically treat conditions like pelvic organ prolapse and stress urinary incontinence in women.
The controversy stems from severe allegations about the integrity and the sourcing of the materials used in the device itself.
Specifically, numerous legal and journalistic investigations concluded that the company had used cheap, counterfeit polypropylene resin.
The allegations were that this resin, sourced through unorthodox channels, was toxic and prone to degrading when exposed to oxygen and bodily fluids,
causing severe chronic pain and complications for thousands of women.
Now, it's worth noting that Boston Scientific publicly and consistently disputed these claims. They cited a 2017 FDA report which examined the resin and found variability, but stated, and I'm quoting, "These differences do not present new safety or effectiveness concerns."
Okay, so that's the company's defense. But regardless of that, the scale of the legal fallout really speaks for itself.
It does. By January 2021, the sources confirmed that approximately 54,000 lawsuits related to the mesh had been filed against Boston Scientific alone.
54,000. This is not a handful of complaints. This is a mass tort event.
It is. And the initial legal awards were massive. One woman who sued in 2011 was initially awarded $100 million in damages.
So that amount was later reduced on appeal to $10 million.
Right. But those initial jury verdicts showed the deep level of public outrage.
So to manage the fallout, BSC began settling. In 2015, they announced they would pay $119 million to settle the claims of nearly 3,000 plaintiffs.
And in March 2021, they agreed to pay another $189 million to settle allegations from various states that the company had seriously misrepresented the safety risks of the mesh in their marketing materials.
And the ultimate regulatory action, which effectively ended the product line, came in April 2019.
The FDA issued a definitive order to Boston Scientific and Coloplast, requiring them to completely remove all vaginal mesh products for pelvic organ prolapse from the U.S. market.
That is the highest level of regulatory censure possible for a product line.
This theme of defective devices continues when we look at their products from the mid-2000s. In 2005, Boston Scientific paid $74 million to settle allegations regarding their NIR stents.
The issue there was that the company continued actively selling these stents despite having information that many were defective.
An alleged failure to prioritize safety that potentially led to 26 patient injuries and 1 death.
That's deeply troubling. But that behavior, the failure to report known device defects, it becomes even more disturbing when we examine the devices they inherited through the Guidant acquisition.
The Guidant story is crucial because it illustrates the systemic risk of this serial M&A strategy.
Right. The criminal conviction centered on Guidant's conduct before the 2006 merger. But Boston Scientific inherited all the legal liability and the penalties.
The sources reveal shocking details about the cover-up surrounding Guidant's defective defibrillators. Guidant, by then a BSC subsidiary, was criminally convicted in 2011.
For what, specifically?
For systematically failing to report life-threatening safety problems with their defibrillators to the FDA. They were forced to pay over $296 million in criminal fines.
Let's delve into the nature of that deception, because it's critical.
Guidant knew these devices had critical flaws, battery failures, short circuits that could lead to the device failing to deliver a life-saving shock.
And despite knowing this internally, they knowingly continued to manufacture and sell the defective devices.
And the depth of the corporate cover-up is extraordinary. They specifically advised their sales reps to tell physicians and hospitals that nothing was wrong with the defibrillators.
And when communicating with the FDA about fixes, they misrepresented the purpose, claiming it was for process improvement rather than correcting life-threatening flaws.
They maintained this deception for a full 10 months after they first knew about the problem. They didn't reveal the defects until 3 patient deaths had already occurred.
This systemic deceit, designed to protect market share ahead of patient lives, is why the conviction was criminal, not just civil.
And even after that conviction, the legal fallout persisted. In 2013, BSC and its subsidiaries, including Guidant, paid an additional $30 million to settle allegations that Guidant had knowingly sold those defective devices to facilities that then implanted them into Medicare patients.
So the public paid twice. Once for the device and again for the cover-up.
And beyond safety failures, the sources also confirmed serious issues with improper influence and kickback schemes.
In 2009, BSC agreed to pay $22 million to settle allegations that its subsidiary, Guidant, had used kickback schemes related to the sales of its cardiac rhythm devices.
And these weren't subtle payments. The scheme involved paying physicians to participate in specific post-market studies. Allegedly, Guidant paid doctors between $100 and $1,500 each to participate.
And the allegation is that this wasn't for genuine scientific discovery.
No. The allegation is that this was thinly veiled compensation to improperly influence physician choices and steer sales toward Guidance, and by extension, Boston Scientific's product.
It completely compromises the integrity of the clinical decision-making process.
And the bribery allegations weren't just exclusive to the acquired Guidant entity. Separately, in 2010, Boston Scientific itself was fined $600,000 by the DOJ for paying a U.S. Army doctor to use and recommend their devices.
So the issue of improper influence appears to have been a broader corporate challenge at the time.
And finally, just to show that this litigation timeline is not ancient history, safety concerns continue to arise. Just in April of 2024, the FDA announced a recall of Boston Scientific's Obsidio-embolic device.
What's that used for?
It's a crucial device used to stop hemorrhaging and excessive bleeding in certain procedures. The concern is very specific. When the Obsidio device is used with a specific injection method called the aliquot technique, it can lead to bowel ischemia.
Which is restricted or insufficient blood flow to the intestines.
Exactly. And because that can lead to tissue death, the FDA classified this as the most serious type of recall, noting that it can potentially result in longer hospitalization or even death.
So the necessity for constant, diligent monitoring of product safety, even on the newest products, is a permanent reality.
It is.
So we've tracked this extraordinary history, groundbreaking innovation like the steerable catheter and the SICD on one side.
And on the other, billions paid out in patent wars, mass tort liabilities with the mesh, criminal convictions inherited from subsidiaries, and persistent kickback schemes.
It truly paints a dual portrait of this medical device giant.
Which leads us into part 4, and it raises a fascinating corporate contradiction. How has the culture and leadership navigated this immense complexity?
This is maybe the most paradoxical aspect of the whole story. While the company has faced intense criticism and billion-dollar liabilities on the product's safety and legal fronts, its organizational culture, especially around diversity and inclusion, has received consistent, high-profile recognition.
The recognition is undeniable. BSC has been repeatedly named to Forbes' Best Employers for Diversity list. They ranked 85th in 2019, made a dramatic leap to 6th in 2021.
6th overall. That's a massive achievement for a medical device manufacturer.
And they remain strong at 171st in 2022. This suggests a recognized, sustained effort to cultivate a supportive internal culture.
Their commitment to gender equality has also been a hallmark. In 2019, Bloomberg included BSC in its Gender Equality Index, which recognizes companies that publicly commit to the advancement of women.
And they consistently receive accolades for supporting working parents. Working Mother magazine listed them as one of the 100 best companies for working mothers for 4 consecutive years, from 2017 through 2020.
And their track record on LGBTQ equality is exceptionally strong. The Human Rights Campaign has named BSC a best place to work for LGBTQ equality.
They achieved a perfect 100 out of 100 score on the Corporate Equality Index every single year from 2015 through 2021.
That sustained perfect score suggests that internally, these D&I standards are deeply embedded.
And this really forces you to ask the analytical question, how can a company maintain this level of external recognition for corporate ethics and inclusion while simultaneously grappling with the severe multi-billion-dollar fallout from product liabilities and criminal convictions?
It suggests a profound structural separation. You have this extremely successful internal culture focused on talent acquisition, retention, and diversity, running in parallel to an aggressive, high-risk operational strategy in M&A that often leads to spectacular legal failures.
The financial and legal risk is siloed from the day-to-day organizational culture and hiring practices.
We should also highlight some of the notable leaders who have shaped the company.
Ursula Burns is a prime example. She served on BSE's board of directors from 2002 until 2009. She resigned from the board to take on the CEO role at Xerox.
Making history as the first African-American female CEO of a Fortune 500 company. Her involvement lends significant prestige to the BSC leadership structure during a very tumultuous period.
Another notable figure is Christina M. Johnson. She served on the board from 2006 to 2009 before resigning to become undersecretary in the Department of Energy. She later returned to the board from 2011 to 2017.
These connections show that BSC attracts and places individuals into the highest levels of corporate and governmental leadership.
And we have to mention Donald Stephen Boehm, who served as Chief Medical and Scientific Officer from 2006 until his death in 2009. Having a figure of his stature in that role underscores the need to blend clinical expertise directly into executive decision-making.
Finally, let's briefly anchor Boston Scientific's global footprint. This level of complex management requires a truly multinational operation.
Far beyond the Marlborough, Massachusetts headquarters, they operate in more than 100 countries. Their European headquarters is in France.
Asia-Pacific headquarters are in Singapore, and Latin America is managed from Weston, Florida. This decentralized structure is mandatory for managing a product line that, by 2016, already exceeded 13,000 diverse products.
So bringing this deep dive full circle, we've tracked Boston Scientific from Itzhak Bentov's idea in a church basement in 1979, fueled by the vision of Abele and Nicholas,
through to the global market leader, defined by the introduction of the Taxus drug-eluting stent and crucial devices like the SICD.
And this trajectory was fundamentally powered by relentless, highly priced acquisitions, epitomized by that $27.2 billion Guidant deal. And somehow it managed to maintain a culture that prioritized diversity and inclusion.
So what does this all mean for you, the listener? The story Boston Scientific provides this textbook yet dramatic demonstration of the dual nature of innovation in the modern medical device industry.
On one hand, you have immense potential for improving and saving lives. Procedures that are less painful, faster, and far less risky than traditional surgery.
But this immense technological benefit is inexorably coupled with massive, self-imposed corporate risk. And the evidence of this risk is clear in the billions paid out in patent disputes.
Over $2.4 billion to J&J alone.
And the crippling financial liabilities from product safety failures, like the defective Guidant defibrillators, and the tens of thousands of lawsuits related to the transvaginal mesh.
The story shows that in the medical world, innovation is expensive and failure is catastrophic. The recurring cost of legal liability, the billions paid out, is essentially a permanent, non-optional R&D budget for avoiding prison and managing brand reputation.
Has to profoundly reshape every corporate decision they make. Which leads us to our final provocative thought for you to consider, building on that M&A strategy.
Boston Scientific's rapid growth is fundamentally tied to its ability to absorb competitors and their technological pipelines. It is the definition of a serial acquirer.
We saw how this strategy brought in the Guidant heart rhythm business, along with its specific pre-acquisition criminal cover-up history concerning defective devices.
And we see the long shadow of inherited liability in the continued settlements related to products like the transvaginal mesh.
So this raises an essential recurring question about accountability. When life-saving medical necessity meets high-speed corporate mergers and acquisitions, how accurately can regulators and the public truly assess the safety risk of these integrated product lines?
The crucial dilemma is this. What happens to corporate accountability when a dangerous device's history of deception, as with Guidant, predates the current corporate owner?
Right. The current owner, Boston Scientific, inherits the liability and pays the fines, but the history of deception belongs to the acquired entity.
And the challenge for the medical industry going forward is ensuring that the speed of M&A never outpaces the diligence required for patient safety, regardless of who manufactured the device originally. It is a legacy that defines the true cost of aggressive growth in medicine.